Ladies and gentlemen, can I just have your attention for a minute? We are still trying to find out whether the minister will be coming. What we would like to do is just proceed with tea, and if you haven't already had some tea, coffee, and then if the Minister hasn't arrived by 10 o'clock, we will just press on with our agenda. So there's a few minutes just to for you to enjoy some refreshments. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, please can I have your attention? We would like to get proceedings underway in 5 minutes, so can I ask you to come in and take your seats? Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Can we get our proceedings underway, please? I would like to start by welcoming you all and saying thank you to everyone for coming, especially to our invited guests, Honourable Her Excellency, Ambassador of South Africa. Welcome, ma'am. Thank you for attending. And represent other members of the diplomatic corps. Thank you for coming. And to all our invited guests and to our I would like to apologize for the confusion at the moment. We were assured by Minister Dr. Masuka that he would be attending.
Good morning. I'd like to just thank Sam Miller for inviting me to open this Congress with a short devotion and prayer. So, one of Israel's most famous kings, David, ruled for about 40 years. He had defeated Israel's enemies, he had consolidated the kingdom, and he had made preparations for the building of a magnificent temple to replace the tabernacle of Moses. In his old age, David proclaimed his son Solomon as his successor, and he arranged for him to take the throne. There's no precise information on the age of Solomon when he ascended to the throne, but it's estimated that he was between 15 and 18 years old. He was a young man, and he was inexperienced in both leadership and in judgment. And after the death of his father, David, Solomon went to the tabernacle of Moses in Gibeon, where he made extravagant sacrifices to the Lord, the God of Israel. That night, God appeared to Solomon in a dream, and he said, "What do you want? Ask, and I'll give it to you." Solomon could have asked for anything, but his response was, "Give me wisdom and knowledge so that I can lead these people, because no one can rule them without your help." Solomon may have been a young man, but he already knew the true source of wisdom. As he later wrote in Proverbs chapter 2 and verse 6, "Only the Lord gives wisdom. He gives knowledge and understanding." In the first book of Kings, chapter 3 and verse 10, the scriptures record that God was pleased that he had asked for wisdom. In response, God said to Solomon, "Because your greatest desire is to help your people, and you've not asked for wealth or riches or fame or for the death of your enemies or for a long life, because you have asked for wisdom and knowledge to lead my people, I will give you wisdom and knowledge. I will also give you more wealth, riches, and fame than any king who has lived before you or any who will live after you." That's from 2 Chronicles chapter 1, verses 10 to 12. As a result of God's blessing, Solomon is still renowned for his great wisdom and his equitable moral judgment, as well as for his extraordinary knowledge and vast wealth. Wisdom and understanding are not just for Old Testament times. When the early church was facing great persecution and times were tough, James, the brother of Jesus, wrote, "But if any of you needs wisdom to guide him through a decision or circumstance, you should ask God for it. He is generous to everyone and will give you wisdom without criticizing, without finding fault, and ungrudgingly." That's from the letter of James, chapter 1, verse 5, from the Expanded Bible. In these turbulent and troubled times, we desperately need wisdom and understanding to make the decisions that will determine the future of our lives, as well as those of our children and grandchildren. God the Father has not changed. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. And Proverbs chapter 2 and verse 6 remains as true today as it was when Solomon wrote it about 3,000 years ago. Only the Lord gives wisdom, and he gives knowledge and understanding. James warns that relying on our own understanding often leads to quarrels and arguments. And he then describes the characteristics of wisdom that were given to Solomon. But the wisdom that comes from God is first of all pure, and then peaceful, peace-loving. It is gentle, patient, considerate, and easy to please. It is willing to yield or open to reason. This wisdom is always ready to help others who are troubled and to do good for others. It is full of compassion and good fruits. It is always fair and impartial. It is honest, sincere, and unhypocritical. Peacemakers who sow with peace will harvest a crop of justice and righteousness. That's James chapter 3, verses 17 to 18 from the Expanded Bible. When we depend on our natural understanding to make decisions, we are placing our faith in ourselves, all the while knowing that we are not in control of events or circumstances. We need instead to place our trust in the guidance of God, the maker of heaven and earth. As Solomon exhorts us in Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 to 7, trust the Lord with all your heart, and don't depend on your own understanding. Remember the Lord in all you do, and he will make your path straight. Don't depend on your own wisdom, and that literally means don't be wise in your own eyes, but respect the Lord and refuse to do wrong. Again, that's from the Expanded Bible. So how do we get this kind of wisdom? In chapter 4 of his letter, James says, you don't have what you want because you don't ask God for it. And Alfred Lord Tennyson, in his poem Mort to Arthur, said, more things are wrought by prayer than this world dreams of. In Hebrews, the writer says, let us come boldly before the throne of our gracious God, that he may give us mercy and give us the grace that we need. Shall we pray? Father God, we come to you knowing that you determine the length and course of our lives. You know the decisions that we face and the dilemmas over the best way forward. We ask for your wisdom to guide us in our deliberations. Give us understanding and insight to guide our discussions. As we place our trust in you, lead us in your peace and direct our paths to the optimal outcome for everyone affected by the choices and the decisions that we make today and in the future. We ask this in the precious name of your Son, Jesus Christ our Savior. Amen. Can we end, please, by just saying together the Lord's Prayer? We all learnt it at school. I'm sure most of you remember it. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Thank you very much, Sam.
Andre, thank you very much for your words. Really appreciate that, and I know that the Lord is with us. So without any further ado, what I'd like to do is call the President, Mr. Andy Pascoe, to come and give his report.
Sam, thank you for the introduction. Andre, thank you so much for those words of incredible wisdom. And we need God's help. Sorry, my glasses are not as strong as they used to be. I'm going to have to adjust my speech as I go. I was expecting to have the minister here present and speak to him, but anyway, let's get underway. The Honourable Minister of Lands, Agriculture, Water, Fisheries and Rural Resettlement in absentia, members of the diplomatic community, past presidents, trustees, councillors, invited guests, farmers and friends, both here present and those joining us via the online platform. It is an honor and a privilege for me to welcome you all to this, the 80th Annual Congress of the Commercial Farmers Union of Zimbabwe. Thank you for making time in your busy schedules to be part of our proceedings today. I would like to begin by expressing my sincere appreciation to our line minister, the Honourable Dr. Masuka, for his interaction with us, for his willingness to attend. I'm not sure what has happened, but he didn't hesitate at a moment when we invited him. He was, and he had bent over backwards when he found he had to fly, and contacted us and said, "Please, could we adjust the schedule? He would still like to attend." I think there's a willingness and a desire on his part to be a part of what we're doing today and to address us and to help us in our journey. The Minister's policy of interaction with the farmers' unions and the regular meetings that he holds with us are testimony to the fact that he is dedicated and committed to doing whatever it takes to ensure that the agricultural sector plays its part in seeing His Excellency President Mnangagwa's vision of Zimbabwe becoming an upper middle income country by 2030 become a reality. His Excellency has publicly stated on many occasions that we are all Zimbabweans and that we all have a role to play in the development of our nation. I would like to thank the Honourable Minister for his policy of inclusivity and for going out of his way to seek our input on the many and varied challenges that we all face. This continues to be refreshing for us at the CFU after so many years of being shunned under the previous dispensation. I would also like to thank the Honourable Minister for continuing to support and facilitate the implementation of the confidence-building measures that were introduced following the signing of the Global Compensation Deed on the 29th of July 2020, namely the issuing of offer letters and 99-year leases to those who are still on their farms or on all or a portion of their original farms. To date, 158 of our farmers have received offer letters through this initiative. There are still a few outstanding offer letter applications, but we look forward to these being processed soon. We also look forward to resolution of some anomalies that have arisen and other issues that we have brought to his attention recently. I must say at this stage we are a little concerned with events that are unfolding on some of the farms, and I would like to highlight and just draw the Minister's attention to the fact that in certain areas all is not well on the land, and appeal to him to intervene in these situations. In addition to the offer letters, 5 99-year leases have been issued, with 173 others currently being processed. On the topic of 99-year leases, we are eagerly awaiting the release of the new 99-year lease, which we have been assured is bankable, transferable, and tradable. One of the greatest challenges currently facing commercial agriculture in Zimbabwe is at the cheapest possible prices without any regard to the way this affects the farmer. A bankable 99-year lease will greatly assist in increasing the funding options available to farmers. Whilst affordable funding options for farmers are vital, even more critical are markets which are able to pay prices commensurate with our costs of production within a reasonable period of time. In this regard, producers of most agricultural commodities have had it extremely difficult over the last 18 months or more. Prices for many commodities have been below the costs of production, and payments have been exceedingly slow. The payments from GMB for the 2022 wheat crop were a classic example, with payments taking up to 8 months after delivery of the crop. We sincerely hope that payments for the 2023 wheat crop will be considerably quicker. The reality for us as primary producers is that for most processors of agricultural commodities, it is cheaper and easier to rely on imported commodities. And unless strong measures are put in place to either reduce our costs of production or ensure that imported commodities cannot be landed in the country cheaper than we can produce them here, local production will not be sustainable. This will be seriously exacerbated should the predictions of a lower than normal rainfall this coming season come to pass. Farming is a business, and unless we are able to cover our costs of production and make sufficient profit to build our businesses, we will not survive. Whilst there are a lot of negatives surrounding the marketing of the agricultural commodities, I would, however, like to thank the Honourable Minister for relaxing the controls that were in place on maize, wheat and soybeans, and for the attractive floor price for wheat which has been set. But again, appeal as strongly as possible for quick payments for wheat that is delivered to the GMB, so that farmers are able to make use of those funds to establish and produce a summer crop. I would now like to move on to the compensation process. Without doubt, the last year has been the most challenging for us since the signing of the Global Compensation Deed on the 29th of July 2020. The government's inability to honour the original payment terms of the GCD has presented huge challenges on every front. Our own constituency, the farmers whose farms were acquired under the fast-track land reform program, are deeply disappointed that after 22 years they are still waiting for some meaningful compensation. Whilst the government's latest payment offer was rejected last year, albeit by a small majority in a poorly responded to survey which we conducted, there are those that are keen to take whatever is being offered. In many cases, these are old, elderly, desperate people who have no option but to take what little they can get. For them, it's a matter of life and death, literally. It's not It's not, I would like it. It's a case of if I don't get it, I have no means of survival. Following our survey, the Honourable Minister of Finance advised us that in the absence of majority acceptance of the offer, he would sign agreements with individual farmers who wished to accept the offer. Whilst CFU has had a role to play in the drafting of this individual farmer compensation agreement, and we've done our best to ensure that both those farmers who choose this option and those that do not are protected and not prejudiced, the final decision on whether to accept or reject the government's offer rests with each individual farmer. It is not clear at this stage how many farmers will follow this route, but what is clear is that there are a substantial number who are not happy with the latest payment offer from government. In an effort to lobby for a better payment plan, some of these farmers have aligned themselves with other groups. It is our intention in the near future to meet with representatives of these groups to discuss and explore options for a better compensation payment plan and to see how practically this can be achieved. I am absolutely certain that unity in our ranks will greatly increase our chances of success. I have to say at this time that division and strife and conflict, certainly in our ranks, would really make things a lot more difficult than they already are. Having been involved in this process since it began in earnest in 2018, I am still convinced that it is possible for a satisfactory outcome to be achieved. And I would like to highlight why I believe this. Firstly, in January 2018 in Davos, Switzerland, His Excellency President Mnangagwa committed to paying compensation as one of his top priorities. He continually is emphasizing the fact that he delivers on his promises and his commitments. I believe he's a man who will do his best to honor this one. Secondly, one of the key issues in the international debt arrears clearance process, also known as the Three Pillars process, which the Zimbabwe government has committed itself to, is the payment of the compensation due to farmers who were affected by land reform. This process was put on hold during the run-up to the recently held elections, but is now beginning to get going again. We as stakeholders have to date been fully involved in the land pillar, which is dealing with three main areas related to land. These are compensation for farmers, the honoring of the beepers, and land administration and governance. Over the last year, we have had numerous meetings with the local head of the African Development Bank and other representatives. And at the high-level meeting that was held in May of this year, we met with the president of the African Development Bank, Dr. Adesina, who is leading the debt arrears clearance process together with former President Chisano of Mozambique. What has been evident to all of us in all of these meetings is that there is a great deal of determination to make this process work. In one of the meetings, it was highlighted that Zimbabwe is the only country in Africa under sanctions, and that the ultimate aim of this process is to see Zimbabwe progress to a place where sanctions are removed. In addition to the AFDB, our friends in the diplomatic community, especially the SADC region, and I would like to especially recognize the Ambassador of South Africa, who's made it a priority to attend today. Thank you, Madam. Really appreciate you being here. And the European countries, they have stepped up and are keen and willing to play a part in helping Zimbabwe move forward. And we have had many positive high-level meetings which have been very encouraging. Whilst it is almost impossible in fact it is, it's impossible for a successful outcome on the compensation process without international assistance. I'm convinced that we are not alone. We do have friends that are walking with us on this journey. The third reason I believe that it is still possible for a satisfactory outcome to be achieved is the Kuvumba mining house. As part of its efforts to show commitment to the compensation process, the Zimbabwe government gave us a 12.5% shareholding in the Kuvumba mining house. The discovery of very large reserves of high-grade lithium ore at Sandawana mine, which is part of the Kuvumba stable, is likely to have a significant impact on the value of Kuvumba shares. And the Minister has, on numerous occasions, told us that those shares are there for us to dispose of and to use as to our best advantage. A massive exercise is currently underway at Sandawana to independently verify the extent of these reserves. Hopefully that information will be available towards the end of this year or early next year. Finally, the fourth reason, and probably the most important, I believe that a satisfactory outcome can still be achieved, lies in the history of the compensation process that led to the signing of the Global Compensation Deed. In my address at State House on 29th of July 2020, when we signed the Global Compensation Deed, I highlighted the fact that it was a momentous occasion in the history of our nation. After almost 20 years of conflict and acrimony between ourselves, our constituency, and the government. And I don't think any of us need to be reminded of how hostile the environment was. Our previous president didn't hesitate to refer to us as the enemies of the state on numerous occasions. The Global Compensation Agreement and the road, the pathway that led to us, brought the two main protagonists in the conflict over land to a place where we were able to put aside our differences and in an atmosphere of mutual respect come together as Zimbabweans and put together an agreement that we all acknowledge is not perfect. It has its deficiencies, but it has enabled us to begin a journey towards compensation and probably more importantly towards a restored nation. I have no doubt that land reform and the way it was conducted has deeply affected the soul of the nation of Zimbabwe, and it's only the healing, the dealing with the past in a way that is inclusive and as Zimbabweans dealing with it with the support of our international friends and partners that will enable us to get to that place where Zimbabwe is a restored nation. Unfortunately, as with many things in life, this journey has not been quick or as easy as we would have liked. But I'm convinced that if we continue along this road and choose not to refer, Rick pointed out in his address, if we look to Almighty God for his wisdom and guidance, we will succeed. I'm also convinced that if we join hands as Zimbabweans and work together to deal with the past, we are far more likely to be given the help we need to succeed than if we choose the path of conflict and division. And I would especially like to say that applies to us as a constituency. The theme of this year's Congress is cultivating growth by dealing with the past and nourishing future generations. It is a fact that without dealing with the past in a satisfactory way into the future. For this reason, it is absolutely imperative that compensation becomes a reality and we will continue to do all that we can to make this happen. It is also obvious that the long-term future of the CFU depends on our ability to attract new members who are actively farming. So, in the coming year, while we continue to work for compensation, we will maintain and expand as best we can the numerous services which we provide to our farming members. And we will also endeavor to get out to the farming areas and encourage the next generation to join us as we serve the commercial farming sector. In closing, I would like to recognize those who have worked so hard over the last year to keep CFU alive. Firstly, thank you to our director, Sam Miller, who thankfully is still with us after a terrible accident in July, which miraculously was not fatal. Thank you, Sam, for all the work that you have put in, way beyond the call of duty, and way more than we could ever afford to pay you for. A big thank you to Louisa Connor, the office manager, for keeping things going so effectively in Sam's absence while he was recovering. Thank you too to the rest of our small but dedicated CFU staff team for all the work that you do for all our members. Thank you also to the CFU Council for the sacrifices that you have made to be involved and attend meetings over the last year. Thank you for willing to serve, because really it's a service with no real reward. So yeah, I appreciate members of council. And to our trustees, Dave Bomer and Colin Clutie, thank you for your wise insights and guidance, and for your the sacrifice that you make to serve us. Finally, to my wonderful wife, Louise, and my amazing family, thank you for praying for me and supporting me and encouraging me to keep going on this journey. However, I count it a privilege, an awesome privilege, to be serving God in Zimbabwe at this time in our history. I know, Father, that you have not forsaken us, and I am looking forward to seeing you work miracles that will astound all of us. May your kingdom come here in Zimbabwe as it is in heaven. To end, I know that the predictions are for below average rainfall season, but my prayer is that despite these predictions, the coming farming season will bring the abundant rains, the full dams, and the bountiful harvest that we all so badly need, and that in the not too distant future we'll see a major breakthrough in the payment of compensation, or at least in a plan that will be satisfactory to all, and will enable our older generation, those that are still with us, to live out their last days in dignity. May God bless you all.
I'd like to thank Andy for his speech. I'd like to thank him for his sincereness, his heart. His heart definitely is after the farmers, and I can only thank him for that. In the absence of the minister not being present, or a speaker being here to be able to represent him, what I'd like to do is open the floor to any questions or any queries you may have with what Andy has actually just brought up now in his speech. Can I open it to you guys? We need to get a mic to go over there, okay? Dion, we're trying to get you a mic. He's fixed it. Okay. Hey, guys. Hi. Here you go. No. I don't have to speak without it. Okay. Dion, just continue with that.
Listen, let me just talk anyway. Andy, thanks very much. I think a lot of people appreciate the time and effort you've put into representing us. And I just want to say, you know what, there's been a lot of disagreement on a lot of stuff. Disagreement isn't always a bad thing because it pushes you to, in the end, thrash it out and come to the right, make the right decision. I just wanted to touch on one thing. You mentioned that finance is a huge problem in the farming scene, and it surely is. But the biggest problem to me is security of tenure. There are a lot of guys that want to go farming, especially younger guys, and it's very difficult for them until this whole security of tenure. You know, you spoke of a handful of 99-year leases that have been granted. Until that's sorted out, it's very difficult for anyone who wants to go farming to put everything in, to put his whole life into that, because they're very reliant on trying to make a deal with someone on the ground, and you can only do so much, and you're spending a lot of time and effort into movable assets instead of developing that property. So I urge CFU to, I know you have been engaging government, but you've got to sort out the security of tenure. Government have to take it seriously and resolve that. Obviously, that includes compensation, because until that's resolved, the conflict remains. So I'd just like to encourage, and I want to thank Council as a whole, everyone sitting there. Whatever your thoughts are, thank you for representing us. We do appreciate that. So just from my side, thank you. But security of tenure is crucial, and government, they need to stop talking and start doing stuff. We were 4,500 farmers, and they're still, after all these years, talking of a handful of 99-year leases. That's not coming to the party.
Thank you, Dion, for those comments. I'd like to just give a response on that. So one of the pillars that, well, the land pillar that I mentioned in this debt arrears clearance process, one of the three things that are being dealt with is the governance and administration of land. Linked into that is the new 99-year lease. So the working committees are currently working on the roadmap that it'll be part and parcel of this whole debt arrears clearance process that needs to be agreed to and signed up to. And the aim is, as we work with and as we influence policy, as we're involved in the committees, and it's not, the land pillar is chaired by this current Swiss ambassador, or should I say co-chaired, because I think there are two chairmen. And, you know, there's a realization and an awareness of what needs to happen, and it's a process. And this roadmap that will lead to the debt arrears clearance process being successful, sanctions being lifted, it is a road, it's a journey. So, unfortunately, we didn't get to where we are. Put it this way, it happened overnight, and the current situation has been like it is for 20 years, and it's going to take time to change it and to influence things. Unfortunately, there is the huge issue of politics which surrounds land, and there's been numerous discussions about how politics can be removed from land, and it's part of the process, and I'm sure things will eventually turn. And we are fully aware of it, Dion, and we are at every opportunity we push the point. I know exactly what you mean, Dion. I've been in that situation myself where things have blown up in my face and I've lost large sums of money because of the lack of security of tenure. You invest in something and next thing you're out. So, yeah, we do push it and we're working with it. We're working where we're able to. And we are in a position where we can influence. We can't dictate, but we can influence, and we strongly urge is in every opportunity. And here I would like to just reiterate the fact that we are not on our own. We have the international community, the regional community that are with us, involved in these pillars and helping chart sound policies, a constructive direction to go forward. So thank you for those comments, Dion.
Thanks. Dion, if I can just add to that, if you don't mind. I mean, if you take CFU, we've been very actively working with Ministry of Lands. Problem is that at the moment it's quite dynamic. I mean, the Director of Lands has just changed. A number of staff has moved on, and we're having to re-establish a lot of the positions with a lot of the offer letters and 99-year leases. The current 99-year lease, let's be clear, is not worth anything really, because it cannot be used as tenure, you're quite correct, nor can the offer letter. But the procedure will be offer letter first, and then we can get 99-year leases. That whole process is also in the process of changing in the way that we attain a 99-year lease. The important thing is that as CFU, and I'm hoping as individual farmers, we are not giving up the race. We're not giving up the fight. We're continually going there. We're continually discussing. We're continually meeting. We've gone as far as the Brigadier General now, who's in charge of securities of lands, who's obviously very influential, very powerful guy, but he's prepared to meet us. So we're making strides, is what I'm saying to you. Are we succeeding? No, because I've got over 70 offer letters telling us that there's no land, okay, whilst the guy's on the land. So there's many things that are going on as we speak. So I just want you guys to take a bit of courage that whilst we don't say a lot, there's a lot going on the lands issue, and we're dealing with people quite actively. Okay. Any other questions? No?
Is this one working?
Yes, sir.
Oh, wonderful. I think maybe our minister was on Air Zimbabwe, probably hasn't taken off yet. First of all, Andy, to you and the council, thank you for all the work that you do. And I think that what Dion said was very true. If you've got opposition to certain things, it can be very helpful at times. Otherwise, every vehicle would look like a Model T Ford because somebody didn't come forward and add things to it. What I want to ask about is the people that are in very difficult situations, destitute-wise. When you did your road trip and you came to Marandera, I asked a question about there was $1 million from Kavinga given to assist destitute people. And your answer at that time was you couldn't use it because you had to sign some agreement before it was used. And you then said, but that has been cleared and it's now available. Now, what has happened with that $1 million? Because that could certainly help some of the very destitute people. And I'm sure there are a lot of them. I mean, we've got Boreal Trust in Marandera, so I know personally some of them. That $1 million, you had said at the Marandera meeting, had now had done away with what you had to sign, and it could now be utilized. Has it been utilized? Has anything gone to help any of the destitute people? Thanks.
Alan, thank you for your question. Harry, are you able to answer that question?
Yeah, thanks. Alan?
Yeah,
Is that okay? Yeah, Alan, yeah, we did say that in Marandera. The money is sitting in DebtVest nominees. We had a number of issues with that, Alan, and I think we've discussed it before. Originally, the minister wanted us to dish it out to all the farmers because that's really who it belongs to. It's compensation for the farmers. But effectively, it's only about $200 per farmer. We then went back and said to him, can we use it to help farmers who are in dire straits, medically and financially? That's when he insisted that a deed of accession be signed. So we left it. We said there's no ways that we can ask farmers to sign a deed of accession on those for $200. So the money is sitting in DebtVest with what's going on at the moment with Profka. We still haven't decided how those funds would be utilized. I would think it's going to go to the farmers. It does belong to the farmers. It's not something that we can use. But I'm well aware, Alan, of the financial stress that a lot of farmers are under. But the money is sitting in DATFest. Does that help, Alan?
Yeah, maybe if I can just add, I think the view of certainly of the Minister of Finance is that $1 million is compensation. It's part of the compensation, and there's a real reluctance on his part to release it to anything else other than a compensation payment. And we have tried our hardest to get him to agree to allow us to distribute it to those in need and those that are desperate. But there's always a stumbling block put in our way. That's the reality of the situation.
Like I said, it's going to cost us more to dish it out than what they can make.
Yeah, it's not for us to be able to allocate to certain individuals as they need it. It would be included as a payment that's due to every farmer who's in line for compensation, and the amount that each farmer would get is so minimal it's not worth trying to do that.
Sorry, is there any more questions? Well, if there's no more questions, may I suggest then we get on to our illustrious guest speaker, Dr. Dougie Bruce, to give us some wisdom. Dougie?
I'm a bit apprehensive about this gizmo and what it might do. It looked a bit floppy a little bit earlier. Goes with age. I don't know, can I release this thing?
Take it out and hold it, might be better. I should have done that.
Ladies and gentlemen, honored guests, it's a great privilege for me to be standing in front of you and speaking today. I was a little oak from south of the railway line, grew up in a working family. They had a farm in Featherstone. We did Sussex, tobacco and maize. And I went to school at Lord Malvern. Most of you haven't heard of it. Only a few of you played sport against us. But this man on my right was in class with me. And we had a wonderful childhood there. So, Sam, thank you for asking me to come and talk. I'm dressed up today in my best suit. I do it when people have passed on in respect, and I do it for 80 years of union and of the Commercial Farmers Union, and I emphasize the word union because it is so important for us to be in union that we go forward. So, my little talk there is about regenerating Eden. And you might think, well, what is this idiot talking about? If in case you don't know, I'm a vet. I go all over the country and I deal with life. And I have a privilege of dealing with animals' lives. I prepare semen from bulls. I've had the privilege of working with Dr. Percy Sharp with embryos. I have watched embryos split and divide. And in that embryo, there's enough information to create a mombi, or an elephant, or a whale. And yet I cannot see it with my eyes. So for this reason, I have to believe that there's something there. So this is what I'm going to talk about today, is about believing, and maybe it's an opportunity for a new direction for our union. Okay, so where are we today with this world's agriculture, and what have we done? That is a picture of Eden painted by a guy, I think it was in 1500 in Belgium. you can see all the multitude of species, the diversity of plants, animals, and birds. That's where we came from. And now, let's just have a look at where we're going. Sam, you press the button, please, Shaman. Let's look at the health situation in the world to this day. Most of us are sick by degree. There's something wrong. You actually don't know the next time you go to the doctor, when he sends that blood test, what's going to happen, what's wrong with you. You don't know whether you've got cancer lurking somewhere. You don't know whether your prostate's functioning properly. You don't know whether you're losing your marbles. You don't know whether you're going to have a heart attack tomorrow. And this is fairly universal. It's not only here. It's all over the world. So there must be something common that is wrong in the way we are existing in this world today. You look at that, obesity. Yeah, I've got a boop. That's because I've got some visceral fat in there, and I have got a degree of metabolic syndrome, which makes me likely to have a stroke and heart disease, high blood pressure, cancers, allergies, early onset Alzheimer's, infertility. My wife's a pharmacist. Most young people of all colors and creeds need pills to stay pregnant. There's something wrong. There's some common denominators, and it's highly likely food-related. Something to do with our production, something to do with the way we preserve our food, where it lasts for months, if not years, in cans and in plastic bags. There's something that's not right, or it's something to do with our food preparation. Maybe we are overheating it. When you overheat protein, you cause a thing called the Maillard reaction, which deforms the protein. When you send it off to test, you'll certainly get so many percentage crude protein. But in the body, it's damaged because the test is an indirect test of nitrogen. So it tells you that there's protein there, but in actual fact, it doesn't work. Allergies are formed and caused by proteins. Maybe we're overheating things and ultra-high treating things. And these are now changing those proteins, so we're allergic to them. So let's look at the food production today. Nature is all about cycles. We have broken cycles. CFU's been going for 80 years. We were a mighty nation in agriculture. We were second in the world in many crops, first in the world in others. So we did it for 80 years, and we still try and do it today. But I think we need to look, we were top of the pops of something that might not have been exactly right. We are overwhelming compensation of the cycles in this world, overwhelming nature's compensation. If I have animals, we know, and as people as well, we have compensatory mechanisms built into our bodies to allow some decrease in function. We can function on one lung, we can function on a quarter of a kidney. So there's room for compensation. What's happening in the world, we have, by releasing lots of carbon, and there are various reasons for that, we are pushing these cycles and nature's ability to compensate to a point now where it's getting a huge wobble in these cycles, and we need to do something about it. So this is the big cycle, day and night. The night comes, and the day comes, as was promised. So respiration, if you look at it, is those 6 carbons mix with O2 and produce CO2 and water. So when we respire, we're making carbon dioxide and water. In the daytime, when the sun shines, that carbon dioxide and water is joined together, and it makes glucose and oxygen. These are fundamental biochemical processes happening all day and all night. Plants at night respire as well. So they're taking in carbon dioxide and they're making oxygen. There at the bottom is a little picture. And when we have respiration, we give off energy. And that is our petrol. That's what gives us the ability to move around. All right, so let's just look at air. If you look, the big issue is all about less than 1% that is carbon dioxide, released into the air from fossil fuels but probably more importantly, from us as farmer, turning soils and taking and releasing the carbon out of the topsoil. Massive amounts of carbon have been released out of the topsoil. We look at oxygen and then we look at nitrogen. Now we know there are bacteria that can pull on that nitrogen without having to buy it in a bag. And yet we've sequestered them. I was told we haven't killed them. We've sequestered them. But it takes a few seasons of lowering your nitrogen to bring those bacteria back into functionality so that we can use them. Think of what that can do to costs. Sam, I think I can do it now. There's the water cycle. You all know how that works with surface runoff, infiltration, and our groundwater store. And just on this, let's just have a look at this. If we get rid of our topsoil, all the pollutants can go down into our groundwater. Now I want to bring two things to mind. Think of a Blair toilet and think of a septic tank. With a Blair toilet, we're taking moisture down into below the subsoil into the ground. At the peak of winter and just before the first rain, where is that moisture in the Blair toilet going? Moisture drops by gravity through all the cracks. We are concentrating effluent and coliform bacteria into our groundwater by taking our effluent, which is immensely useful as a fertilizer, putting it underneath the subsoil and wondering why our groundwaters are contaminated. We do it all the time. Our fecal matter should be on top of the surface where the bacteria and bugs in the topsoil can assimilate it back into fertilizer. So there's a few things in this world that we're doing wrong. Life cycles. Sorry, how do I go back, Sam? I want to go back one. Then again, this is phosphorus cycles. All minerals have their cycles as well. So that is just a picture showing you how animals recycle, on the right, recycle phosphorus. And then the decomposers break it down, release it again, and put it back into plants. And then again on the right is how it's weathered, and it goes into water or it goes into fossil mining areas where we can mine it out. And there's very few areas in the world where it exists. But it's all around us, and we need animals and plants to cycle it, and we need the organisms in the ground to actually make it available again. Then we look at our own life cycles, and here it's all about nutrients. Plants, animals, roots, and then that sunshine, moisture, and that cycle continues. The weather. We're seeing huge variances in the weather. The fact that the earth is tilted about, I don't know what it is, 20 degrees, allows us to have seasons. And we have day and night. And our seasons are becoming more and more unpredictable because we've affected all these cycles that are happening all around us. So the key is topsoil. That shows you the soil horizons. We've mined it. We've leached it. We've killed everything in it. We've lost its structure, and we wonder why it's dry. I have 2 bags of soil, pit sand and some topsoil. And what we've essentially done is taken that, and we've turned most of our farms or our soils into pit sand. So the topsoil is absolutely critical to our survival. A little bit about topsoil and carbon. There's an underground zoo that we cannot see, but we need to fully understand. There are elephants in the ground. We just haven't taken time to look at them. There are bacteria, there are fungi, nematodes, yeasts, worms, and insects, and they all do their stuff there, but because we can't see it, we actually don't take care of it. The soil's a living organism. There are more microbes in 1 teaspoon of fertile soil than there are the 7 or 8 billion people on Earth. Topsoil has been destroyed. Fertilizers sequester a lot of those bacteria. The chemicals, the sidles, created by those chemical plants after the Second World War, They kill almost all of those bacteria, and what does it do? It puts them out of kilter. So the checks and balances between each other have been lost, and that's why we're getting a lot of these pathogens coming through. All living organisms need a skin to prevent dehydration, and that's the topsoil with its blanket of mulch on the top. So basically our soils have also become unbalanced, and now that's why we have lots of pathogens taking over, and for that we need more bactericidals, and so it goes on and on. Those bactericides are going into the soil and they are contaminating us as human. The topsoil needs to be fed. It needs carbon to be laid down on it, and it needs air. So our soils need the air to penetrate. That changes the balance between aerobes and anaerobes, and we have too many anaerobes in the soil, and most of the anaerobes are pathogens. So there's this fellow, and you might want to get on your phones at night when things are boring and have a look at this guy, Gabe Brown. He has put forward some principles. Do not disturb the soil or minimum till. We started that in this country, but it needs to be taken further, thanks to Brian Aldrieve. Keep the soil covered, mulch it. It keeps it cooler, so it takes the soil temperature down about 2 degrees, and it also preserves the moisture. So when there's evaporation from the soil, it'll often hit that mulching and come back and create its own little biosphere there and stops the moisture going into the air. You also want to increase the diversity in plant species. There's this thing called quorum sensing. They reckon when you put more than 8 species of plants together, like in a meeting you have a quorum, they start to all assimilate and work together. Now, how do they do that? It's basically by the mycorrhiza in the ground and the bacteria starting to link up and help each other. Mycorrhiza are fungal roots that either penetrate the root of the plant or attach to the outside. And they can share micronutrients between different plants. Bacteria surround the roots of plants, and they are fed by sugars from photosynthesis. The mycorrhiza will share minerals between plants that are grouped together. So when you have a number of species together, they take out a lot of the variation that one gets the variance that one gets with single monocultures. So we're trying to do diversity of plantings. Keep roots in the soil as much as possible. Why do we want that? Dead roots are carbon in the soil, and they also take air down into the soil, and those mycorrhiza that feed on those roots give off a thing at the bottom called glomerulin. Now, glomerulin is actually the exudate from plants that helps to bind the soil particles. Once you start binding soil particles and giving a structure, now the air and the moisture can get in, so your penetration is better. So we've spent a long time killing all those fungi and bacteria in the soil. The last thing is using a diversity of animals on the soil. There is some thought that ruminants that have millions and millions of organisms, protozoa, bacteria, and fungi, are actually what seeds the soil when soil is depleted in droughts, etc., of organisms. The ruminants come, they defecate, the rain then takes those into the soil, and it reinvigorates the soil. So you need those organisms. I'm sure you might not know, but when an animal, a ruminant, eructates and chews a cud, it takes organisms from its rumen to its mouth. They enter its saliva. When it grazes, a little bit of that saliva is put onto the grass. That grass grows quicker than if you cut it with a pair of scissors. So those bacteria stimulate the grass. So ruminants stimulate vegetation growth. So they are hugely important to be incorporated in our farming. So work with nature rather than against it. Soil disturbance. Every time you turn the soil, you get rid of carbon. Try not to disturb it and disturb those mycorrhiza that are trying with their glomerulin to actually form particles so that the oxygen can get in. We know about conservation tillage, the good work Brian did with Foundations for Farming, and then the various livestock methods that cause disturbance of the soil. Covering the soil, mulching and more mulching, carbon enters the soil and builds topsoil, leaves, straw, hay, anything that has got carbon. God's blanket, one straw revolution is how this person in Japan did this, and he totally transformed the whole area of Japan. It's well written in a book. Preserve moisture in the soil, and it cools your soils. Increasing diversity, we've talked about that. Animal impact, and I've talked about the hair roots and the mycorrhizal fungi joining between the plants, and the second last point there, the glomalin from the mycorrhiza. Sam, your battery's running out. Okay, we've covered the animals. So, Percy Sharp, who's from Beatrice, who's a vet and does a lot of embryo transfer work. He's one of the top guys working in New Zealand now. He came in 2016 and spoke to CFU. Again in 2019. After that, we set up a WhatsApp group. We've got now 290 people all over the world on our little regen group. And that's our logo, putting life back into farming. I've named the one area of our surgery there, the Jackson Sharp House, after Yapi Jackson, who's had huge input into this. And those of you from Murrundera remember Jacko Jackson, who also used to promote this. So these are just some of the things that we're trying to do. We've got that WhatsApp group, and you're welcome to join if you want. There's a lot of discussion there. Not always that interesting, but there is a lot of discussion. We formed a regen committee, and we've been working at art. And the whole objective is to repurpose art farm into regenerative agriculture. We went out, and thanks to Ben Purcell Gilpin at Oak Foundation, we've been given a chunk of money. We have a student he's a son of Zimbabwe, he's actually Richard Wingfield's grandson, a very clever guy, going to do his PhD looking at conventional agriculture and then transforming it through to regenerative and looking at the full costs and the implications of doing that. So that's starting this season. As I mentioned, the Oak Foundation has given us money. We're also going to set up some small-scale areas in Mount Darwin, where we will set up some models for transformation as well. Percy Sharp and I and Mark Hook have been working on developing a heat-tolerant, short-coated, pasture-reared Zimbabwe dairy animal. We are using jerseys or Kiwi cross. The embryos were brought in from New Zealand, all at our own expense, and put into animals, and now we have crossed them with Mashona, and we now have animals on the ground, and if anyone wants to, go and have a look at Mark Hook's dairy. We're trying to come up with a grass-fed, small, heat-tolerant dairy animal that produces 10 to 12 liters a day, and we're milking them once a day, but they get pregnant easily, they live a long time, and instead of the classic 2 or 3 lactations, these animals can live and do 8 or 10 lactations or more. So that's one of the things we're doing. The Kiwi cross and the Mashona breed, we've been doing work on that. The family cow, you will recall Dr. Yapi Jackson, he had this dream about a Mombe Yomai program. In the Shona culture, the son-in-law will buy the mother-in-law a cow, and it's called Mombe Yomai. The mother-in-law can own goats and only this cow. So the idea is that these crossbred Mashona Kiwi cross or Jersey cross cows will be the animals where they care for it. And the idea is that 1 teat is for the calf, 1 is for sale, and 2 for the family, and different ratios of that depending on the lactation and where that cow is in lactation. So that is something that we are hoping to develop. Now, most of you will have heard about theileriosis and what it's doing to our cattle industry. If you have one animal that's producing milk that you can sell and you can care for and keep it confined, this is an answer to a lot of those folk who've lost cattle from theileriosis and whose pastures and will remain contaminated from the carrier animals in those areas. So the threat will remain to those small-scale producers and large-scale as well, if there are carrier cattle and the brown ear ticks around. So, who are we? We know who we are, we know where we've been, and where we're going. We're not too sure, but we've been here for 80 years. CFU's been around for 80 years. We need a new direction and a new start. There's a new dawn. It's defined as a new beginning, a fresh start, an important, promising turning point. The Latin is aurora nova. What am I suggesting? What can we all do? We can try it at our schools. Nicola Johnston's been doing it at St. John's Junior, where children get 1 square meter of irrigated farmland or little area in the garden there. They produce wheat, they nurture it, they harvest it, and they make a pizza and they eat their own pizza. And she is doing it according to regenerative methods. So that is something we can teach our kids at school. We can do it on our fields and our farms. We can do it in our gardens and our musha at home in the communal area. We can reduce our footprints, recycle, and create less waste. We can fix the cycles in all of our patches. We can show our children and get families involved, and we can become teachers of regeneration. We need to build our soils, we need to re-establish our cycles, and we need to make topsoil. So, this whole thing about regen, if you're interested, come to ART and follow what we're doing there. We're trying to re-establish Eden and doing things better than we've done and become champions of this, as opposed to the old way of doing farming. I'll leave that with you. That's my story. Thank you.
Dr. Dougie, thank you very much. We really appreciate your input, and for me anyway, that's an eye-opener. I'd like to open the floor for any questions to Dougie Bruce now.
I can hear.
Yeah. Can you tell us, look, we have CRS moving very fast towards Maruma. It's come out of the Swinga, the Shoreline provinces, these are Midlands, now into Maruma. Can you give some advice to farmers how they can prevent it, or what methods they can put in place to try and limit the damage?
Okay, so theileriosis is a tick-borne disease transmitted by the brown ear tick. There's another tick, it's a low-felt brown ear tick, Zambesiensis, but you cannot tell the difference just by looking at them. What we think has happened is that the low-felt ticks come up onto the high-felt. The low-felt tick is what's called non-diapausing. It's not only around in the adult stage when we've got long daylight length of December, January, February, which affects the traditional appendiculatus, which is a traditional brown ear tick. So it's diapausing. It's only active at those 3 months generally. Okay, so now you have this tick that's able to complete life cycles even in winter. So that's the one issue. This tick, animals remain carriers. So if you treat animals, they're actually your biggest threat because they contain the organisms inside them. So your biggest threat is the movement of carrier animals. And you cannot tell that they're carriers except that they survived an outbreak. So those animals, if they come into your area, unbeknown to you, they can see the brown ear ticks in your area and hey presto, you've got a problem. So that's movement control, but I think it's gone past the point where we can control movement because we cannot control movement. And neither can the vet department, because you need fences and you need discipline and security, and we've lost all those. You know, by nature, A1, there's hardly any fences left, communal areas. So you can only have fencing disciplines and controls where those fences are and end. So that makes it difficult. Dipping is what we advise because if you don't let the ticks attach long enough to transmit, which normally is in about 3 days, they will pick up the infection from carriers as either larvae or nymphs, and they're on the animal for about 5 days, then they fall off. They can last for months and months, literally. Nymphs can last for 2 years without a blood meal and stay infected. When they get on the animal, they transmit after about 3 days. And the level of infectivity will depend on how bad the animal gets. It is to a degree dose related. So you need to blanket your animals in a layer, an all-over layer of a acaricide, so that not 1 or 2 can get on. Now effectively what happens, knapsacking doesn't work, and neither do pour-ons. So you either need a spray or dip tank, and when you have those, you need to manage them very well, because if you have a dirty spray race and you block some nozzles, Mombis will put their nose and go through the dip, meandering through, and often these brown ear ticks are on the nose because their head's down. So they're right on the edge here, and that's how they get infected. So it's dipping, I'm afraid. We don't like using those things, and we're running out of those that are effective for blue ticks, but they're all effective still for brown ear ticks. Have I answered your question?
Thank you. Can that be passed on for wild animals?
No. Nothing to do with wild animals. They don't play any part.
That's effective dipping.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, there's proposals to vaccinate. One can vaccinate, but if you start vaccinating, then all the Mombis become carriers. And brown ear ticks are not likely to leave. So the brown ear ticks will then become highly, highly infected. And any animal that's unvaccinated, like an unvaccinated calf, one would need to then vaccinate at about 4 months of age, the whole country. Now, the government, I'm not sure whether it has the funds to be able to do that, because the last time they made a Theileria vaccine, the actual cost was about $5 a Mombi. So I don't know whether it's something we could embark on. Certainly in East Africa they do it, but if they don't do it, then those calves are so highly infected they die. Or what farmers do there is they just blanket treat with tetracyclines, which can reduce it before it's multiplied a lot, or they have to use the bupropion, which is a treatment, if they've gone too far, those animals that come through that blanket of tetracycline. So whatever it does, it adds cost. And management has to improve, which is okay. That's why we're here. Any questions? Right, thank you.
Sorry, Doug, can I ask you a question, please? You mentioned Hugo Wingfield is going to be doing a PhD on conventional versus regen agriculture. Confirm that's going to be happening at Art Farm? Or
yeah, he's lining up to do it. Some of the things that these funds have been given to are to bring people that are knowledgeable in regen. And on the 4th of December, we have Francis Yateman, who first spoke at Beef School recently. And then later that week, he's going out to farmers to see them on farm, and they'll pay him to come and consult. But it's going to be free for farmers on Monday afternoon, 2 o'clock, Art Farm, 4th of December. This guy knows his stuff. He's going all over the world, and he's got the test kits and everything. So if people want to follow on in this journey and just see where we go, I'd highly recommend they come along and be part of this whole new thing. I wake up early because I'm so excited about all this. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, I just, all right, Roy?
Yeah, your art farm, is it open every day? Do you have to make appointments? Is there a fee to come and have a look at what's going on? What is the story? Because I'm sure this is creating a lot of interest from a lot of people.
Art Farm belongs to a trust that it belongs to you guys, the farmers. And thanks to that man over there, when he was head of oilseeds, he put half the money in. So the way we see it, that help manage the place, is to show everybody and anybody. We might need to set up that we have somebody that can show people around. Recent trials on some of the We did some of the cover crops, and we fed cattle on it, and they gained 1.5 kilos a day. The value of that gain was more than had we put in a wheat crop. So things like that. There's alternatives. So, yeah, it's just a thought. Yeah, so art's there. A research station is there for the players like yourselves, the farmers, and that's our intention. Yeah.
Yes, Doug, we have the South African ambassador would like to ask a question.
I thought I had a voice, but it doesn't seem so. Yeah, I would like to know, people out there in the rural areas, do you sometimes have a time when you call a meeting for them just to discuss about how you keep the cattle? Because some of them, they find that they've got certain illness. Do you sometimes call and be with them and talk the importance of how, when there's something wrong with the cattle, what they should do and all that?
Yes, ma'am, I have lots of phone calls, but I can't go and visit them all because it costs money, and unfortunately the small-scale folk can't afford to pay my fee, but I do help. And when people ask me, I help, and so we, through groups and that, we help folk, and through training. But this is what part of art wants to do. We want to actually be able to have small-scale farmers come there. We want to set up a model unit at art with that dairy cow, a little family, and doing things the modern way, and we want to cost it out and see how they can survive. So these are things we want to do. Yeah, the research is for all people.
I thought there's a time when we just call the community, or of course we'll go to the chiefs first, and then say, we would like, you know, to be together with them and share. They will also share their challenges and also share how theirs survive and all that. Thank you.
I'm only one person, so it's quite difficult, but the vet department does it regularly. Our veterinary department is doing what you're asking. Yeah. Okay. Any more questions?
Yeah, Doug. Art Farm used to be very proactive in circulating research data and results, and obviously things have changed and it's not quite as easy to, well, we don't have the things like the Farmer magazine where Richard Wingfield wrote his article every week. Is there a forum by which the results are made available? How do people access that information?
Okay, Andy, so we've got a website, and the intention is to put it onto there. You must remember that art was quite heavily subsidized by CFU and the industry as a whole. So the fact that it survived is a miracle as well. And it's a lot of good folk have worked there for nothing and put in their time free. So the idea is that we're going to try and get this information across. So the work on the cover crops, we had 40 or 50 people out there. So we don't have a farmer magazine. Maybe it's something CFU can start, but we do try and put things in Zamunda, which is a private thing for farmers. So we try and put it out into there. But our communications, we know, has to improve, and we're working on that. Yeah.
Yeah, so CFU does have the CFU calling, which goes out. So that is an avenue that we could work together with art and make information available, certainly through the CFU
Look forward
platform.
to that. Yeah, that's no problem.
So your funding at this stage is purely from Oak Foundation.
That's correct. So what I'm intending to do, I've spoken to Kevin on it. I'm hoping that we can set up a trust for this region, and then if people see that we're doing the right thing and it's spent wisely, and there's a lot of amplification of their money invested that lots of people learn, then I'm sure others would want to follow suit and help us to get on with this. Yeah.
I think that going forward, if this regen agriculture, if it's able to be demonstrated through research, local research done here within Zimbabwe, that regen agriculture can have a large impact economically, I think that would have very powerful, would send a very powerful message to, certainly to the progressive farmers, that are on the land today.
May I make a suggestion? I think all the farmers out there need to form little study groups, and there'll be different guys in the community that will be trying different things, and it's a good place to communicate and go and show each other. So we need to organize ourselves as farmers again to be in union and actually work together and try some of these different methodologies and procedures. So, and show and tell. Now, Mark Hook sits here. Mark Hook has become a videographer of note. He repeats himself a lot of times to remind himself what he said. But Mark has transformed an area unbelievably. So those are things each person can try some on his own farm and become his own researcher. What we proposing is not complicated at all. It's not complicated at all. Everyone can do it. That's why I'm proposing that everybody does it in their own yard, wherever they are. I'm hoping to see these kinds of things happening in Dandara even.
What I know about cattle is quite frightening, but my neighbor across the dike, Mr. Hook, I shared some information with him about biological control of ticks. It was developed by the late Steve Barry, and there's been some success in the use of tick control in Chinoi by Niels. I was wondering if you guys have done any trials on that, because it seems to be quite topical, especially in light of the conversation you spoke about. If it's not something which you guys have done any work on, I'd encourage you to have a look at that, because I think it's farming for the future.
Okay, so I've investigated it and I've tried it on my own cattle at Art. When you're trying to break a disease, you need to have something that has an explicit removal. Now, with the biologicals, they cover the ticks, and then there's a biological process where they have to enter the tick and kill it. But by that time, transmission would have occurred. So it's all right possibly on a farm that doesn't have any inherent disease, and you go onto it, and then the ticks can be destroyed, because you have to destroy them before they fall off and lay eggs, or they fall off but they don't lay eggs, because otherwise they've multiplied already. So for strict control in a disease situation, they're unlikely to work. But if you are in a clear area and you apply it, and you find that you decrease the number of ticks because it's got a slow kill, then by all means. But the work that's been done is observational. We need to actually do proper trials. But having come from an acaricide background, the trial work is quite something to do. You need cattle, and they can die if you don't do it properly. So it's quite explicit. But there's no reason why a few farmers can try it and see, but don't do it if you've got any tick-borne disease in your area. Okay, because it doesn't kill quickly. Okay, have I answered your question? Yeah.
Can we make sure that is advertised on the CFU calling and on our WhatsApp groups, please, Mark? Thanks.
Okay. Is that it? Thank you. Thanks very much, guys. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Doug, thanks very much. Just a few observations as a cattleman. Mac, I recall tyroleosis being diagnosed in the fig tree district of Matabeleland 50 years ago. So I don't think it's something that's migrated recently. And not to question the thought of Doug that knapsacking doesn't work. I would suggest that it's the application of the knapsack. And it's more a function of the person using it, and it's a wonderful solution to our communal and our small-scale people who've just got a small number of animals to treat. And they handle those cattle daily. And it's the attention to detail in the application of that knapsack, which is the critical factor, and not the knapsack itself. Too many of our people rely on government, and they say that there's no dip in the communal dip tank, so it doesn't work. And they watch their cattle die, rather than taking control of their own destiny, their own cattle, and ensuring that the application is timely and concentrated exactly as it should. It's just another opinion as to that. Finally, I just don't believe adequate thanks and recognition has gone to our current CFU leadership and team. It's more than just these three people here. It's that small team of incredibly loyal servants who work in the background, often unrecognized, who are always there, ready, willing, and able to sort out fuel issues, to sort out all the minor issues that sometimes our top desk can't manage. This is not the huge engine of yesteryear, of our wonderful big business in Marlborough. Yet we expect of this team to still keep the performance levels at what we expect. And it's incredibly difficult. We all are aware of it. But just on a personal note, I would like to thank you, Andy, for your unstinting loyalty, your absolute dedication, what you've achieved in the short time that I've been involved with the CFU has been awesome. And I would call you all to join me in giving Andy, particularly with his team, a round of applause. Thank you.
Alan, thank you very much. On behalf of all of us who are involved, I have to be honest, I am deeply indebted to the team that you talked about. I happen to be the face at the front, but these are the guys behind who do all the work. But thank you again. We still haven't seen any representatives from ministry that I can see. So, yeah, obviously that ball got dropped. This brings us to the point in our agenda where we present the Farming Oscar for 2023. And I have the privilege of reading the citation for this year's winner. And I should have done this right at the beginning. The Zimbabwean Farming Oscar has a long and proud history, having been introduced in 1961 by the late Mr. C.G. Tracy during his term as Vice President of the Commercial Farmers Union, as an award in recognition of those who have generally done well for agriculture. Over the years, winners have been chosen from the practical and scientific disciplines of agriculture, as well as from the administration and leadership roles, with winners selected in recognition of having contributed significantly to the agricultural progress in Zimbabwe in its widest sense. This year's winner is no exception and fits the required profile as having given outstanding service in the advancement of agriculture. This year's Oscar recipient was born in Chinoy and attended Hillside Junior and Milton High Schools. He was a prefect and is an accomplished distance runner. He has run the Two Oceans Marathon and Comrades Marathons on several occasions and runs for pleasure. After school, he enrolled at the University of Zimbabwe, initially in crop science, but soon switched to animal science. Here, Duncan Hale inspired him and his class of 7 students with cutting-edge technologies in genetics. He qualified with his BSc Animal Science in 1983. He then started working at Matopo's research station as a research officer. He was offered a scholarship at Texas A&M University and completed his master's degree in 1986. Texas A&M is recognized as one of the top livestock universities in the world. He returned to the research station and worked there until July 1999 as Chief Research Officer. En route to USA, the Oscar recipient first met his wife in the National Parks Library when visiting his friend and UZ classmate, Brian Child. She was working for National Parks as a game ranger. That first meeting led to a friendship, and the two married in 1996. His MSc thesis was based on inbreeding in Afrikaner cattle. He developed this topic further for his PhD thesis, which he completed in 2004. He achieved top credits at the University of the Free State in Bloemfontein and wrote 7 publications in the South African Society for Animal Science Journal and was named their Eminent Animal Scientist of the Year, an award he was flown to Cape Town to receive. While at Matopos, he was a council member of Zimbabwe Herd Book as representative for Matabeleland when Jeff Fredericks was manager. He has always had a keen interest and passion for the indigenous cattle breeds of Zimbabwe, as well as pedigree breeding. He served on the council from 1988 until he took over from Jeff as manager of ZHB in 2009. The Livestock Identification Trust and Zimbabwe Cattle Traceability Schemes were set up by the Cattle Producers Association, cattle farmers, and the Veterinary Department in 1999, with the objective of continuing to export beef under the Lome Agreement to Europe. The late Dr. Hargreaves and the Veterinary Department regulated traceability by twin tagging under the Animal Health Act. This was the first recognized traceability scheme in Africa and is self-supporting to this day, even though the traceability functions and exports stopped in 2001. This year's Oscar recipient was the founding general manager and was the founding general manager, and this is a post he continues to hold. And he has consulted on several traceability schemes in Africa and Georgia, Mauritius, and Azerbaijan. LIT also administers the Zimbabwe Quality Assured Pork ZQAP scheme, started by the Oscar recipient in conjunction with our guest speaker today, Dr. Doug Bruce, and Kevin Parsons in 2000. This is the oldest quality assurance scheme in Africa and continues today. He sat on the Livestock and Meat Advisory Council, and this robust organization has grown over the years under his guidance when he took over the running of this organization and orchestrated its self-funding model. The LMAC has become the lobbying and advocacy mouthpiece for all livestock value chains, including aquaculture, goats, rabbits, pigs, and poultry, including these value chains, abattoir operators, meat processors, and stock feed manufacturers. He managed the finances, meetings, and minutes of the associations and administered all their affairs and events. He kept exemplary records, provided reports, and statistics of the livestock industry. He had the vision to bring 2 agricultural economists, Crispin Sukume and Reneth Mano, into the fold to assist with the running of the services of LMAC. Since 2020, our Oscar recipient has slowly stepped aside so that he can focus on ZHB and pedigree breeding, and the 2 economists now manage LMAC. He was appointed as the Chief Executive Officer of the Livestock Registration Federation in South Africa in October this year, creating synergies between South Africa, Namibia, and Zimbabwean pedigree breeders. To be asked to fill this position is a great honor for him and the ZHB. Working with a team of Australians, he is developing the Breed Plan Bureau for animal data and the Herdmaster on-farm data capture platform. The Thuli Cattle Society and latterly the Brahman Breeders Society have had breed runs done that compare animal data across the region. More recently, genomic profiles are being developed for various traits. He has been instrumental in keeping Zimbabwe and its breeders on par with the latest technology in the world. This year's Oscar recipient is a man of keen intellect and integrity and is fully dedicated and passionate about the livestock industry of this country. He has served the industry both locally and abroad and has presented papers on many occasions. His near 40-year journey in the industry has been ably followed and supported by his beloved wife. He has a great sense of humor and, despite his achievements, remains humble and approachable. He helps all those who ask him for assistance. He is a great communicator and is very intuitive. He has led the industry in an exemplary manner. He holds the industry's highest respect, and for this, the CFU awards Mario Beffa the Farming Oscar Award for 2023. Maria, please can I ask you to come forward and receive the gift that we have for you. Thank you.
Wow. Mr. President, Andy, everybody here and online, wow. Thank you. Thank you all very much. It's been a journey that I've really enjoyed, and it's been a journey that I've carried with you. I mean, I've always felt that I've just been a servant to the livestock industry, and you are my clients. And I've always enjoyed working with the farming community because we deal with a real bunch of nice people. And that's what's given me stimulus to carry on. And I see a lot of faces here, a lot of people that I've interacted with over the years. And I'm really thankful and honored to receive this. Thank you very much.
Maria, thank you so much. Really, it is the servant heart that I think is the powerful thing, and we thank you for your service. And yeah, the Farming Oscar is a small token, a small recognition of your sacrifices and what you've done for us. Thank you very much. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of the formal proceedings of today's 80th Annual Congress. All that remains is for me to thank our CFU staff team for organizing everything, putting it all together, and for helping it to run so smoothly. Thank you to the team at the back who've managed the sound system and the online streaming, which I hope has worked. And thank you to all of you for, especially our invited guests, for coming. I hope that you have found some of the presentations today useful and educational and helpful to you. And we thank you for your time and energy. And thank you to our CFU members and invited guests who have come. Really grateful to all of you. And there's a finger lunch and cash bar out at the back. And I would encourage you please to enjoy it. And thank you very much, and may God bless you all.
We'll get hold of you.
And council members, CFU council members, thanks so much. We'd like to get our post-Congress council meeting underway in about 5 minutes. Okay, sure. Welcome. Thanks.
Music on straight away. Thank you for that beautiful
Okay,
gift.
sure. Welcome. Thanks.
Cronobus is here to help commuters get to destinations in a safe and reliable manner. Created with a purpose to save you time, which ultimately saves you money. Cronobus is here to help commuters get to destinations in a safe and reliable manner. Created with a purpose to save you time, which ultimately saves you money. The new Cronobus is here to help commuters get to destinations in a safe and reliable manner. Created with a purpose to save you time, which ultimately saves you money. The new Cronobus is here to help commuters get to destinations in a safe and reliable manner. Created with a purpose to save you time, which ultimately saves you money. The new